right, guys, thank you so much for coming. It's 3:04, so we'll go ahead and get started. I told Sheila the presentation part of this isn't super duper long, but I want to take some time to show you some examples, and so we have as much time to look at that as you want to. I want to stop for a second and introduce Tara Perrin and Kim Godwin in the back. They are, Tara light blue, Kim darker blue, and they are the new online instructional designers in MTSU Online, and so they are intelligent agent experts, and so if you want to know anything else about intelligent agents, they're good people to talk to. I want to talk to you today about how I use intelligent agents, so again, they may have lots of ideas about ways that are different than what I do. Can you guys give me a show of hands? How many people have used intelligent agents before? Wow, okay. So there's a lot to learn. They're really not that bad. So what I like to say about intelligent agents is they're not miracle workers. I haven't found one yet that'll grade my students' papers. I haven't found one that'll impersonate me on discussion. So unfortunately, they're not to that level, but they do save a lot of time and they help create an instructor presence in your course. And so those of you who are repeat attendees, I did a presentation in November about discussion, and we talked a little bit about the community of inquiry. And I want to mention that briefly because that's the framework that I use when I teach online. And I want to talk about how I use intelligent agents to fit in with that framework. And then I also want to talk a little bit about demonstrating your instructor presence and how intelligent agents can help you do that. And then we'll talk about using replacement strings and creating intelligent agents. Does anyone already use replacement strings? Again, not, okay. The instructional designers, I'm thrilled you raised your hand. We might be concerned if you didn't, right? Okay, so let's get started.
So we recently started using them though so that we can fake.
Oh, good. The community of inquiry framework is this diagram that was developed by Garrison, Anderson, and Archer in the year 2000. They are online instructors, and they have sort of developed this design to set out the kinds of roles and activities that make an online course successful. And so a community of inquiry is a group of individuals who collaboratively engage. Engage is a really important word in that definition. In purposeful critical discourse and reflection to construct personal meaning and confirm mutual understanding. So that, of course, means your students in your courses are going to be interacting with your content that you have so thoughtfully designed. They're going to be interacting with you, the instructor, and they're going to be interacting with each other. And so doing all of that, the teacher is filling a couple of roles. The teacher's filling a social role and a teaching role. And the students are primarily responsible for their cognitive role and a social role as well. And so the instructor is facilitating their engagement with the students' engagement with the content, and their engagement with the course design. And so those all result in supporting the discourse, setting the climate, regulating your students' learning, and all of that takes an awful lot of time. And so intelligent agents to me are a way for me to do some of that without spending too terribly much time on individual students. Intelligent agents aren't, I wouldn't say, they do take some time to set up. I want to be transparent about that. But they do clone over. So once you get them set up, you can clone them. And I actually have a course available that anyone who's interested in having mine, I will add you to a user to this course, and you could copy mine out into your course if you want to, which would save you some time. I've also given you some handouts, and we'll talk about those later. So I don't want you to reinvent the wheel. But some of these things, like demonstrating your social presence and your teaching presence, that can be hard to do in a class, especially a lot of you are teaching high enrollment classes or a lot of sections. And so this is a way for you to make students feel like you're taking a personal interest in them, like you are noticing their activity in the course, you're noticing their achievement or lack of achievement in the course, you're noticing their presence or absence in the course. And so the agent is a way to help you sort of monitor that without you actively doing it, and then it will take some actions on your behalf, and I'll describe what those are. Demonstrating teaching and social presence is how you demonstrate to your students that you're a real person, you're not just an automaton, you're not just a computer, and that you are engaged in their learning and that you want them to learn this content. Imagine, and I think it's easy to think, I post an announcement on day one, I give them their feedback, they're reading, they can sort of get a feel for who I am in my feedback. But the research by Garrison, Anderson, and Archer show that that's not enough to make your students feel like this is a good learning community. That they actually need to understand you a little bit better as a person, they need to understand each other as people, and they need to feel like a group, that they're in there together, they have some common goals. And so these are some ways that you can demonstrate your teaching presence, and an intelligent agent can help you accomplish all of these. One is setting expectations. So our students often take online courses from multiple faculty who have designed their courses really differently, perhaps. And so it's important for you to tell your students what to expect in your class. What are your expectations for them? What should they expect from you? That will help them kind of get a better feel for you, and they'll feel a little bit more comfortable. Students who feel like online environment can be really cold. And so students who don't feel like you're actually there and invested in them, they may never raise their hand and ask a question. They may be like the student on ground who's in the back, and they're just never going to engage with you. So you setting your expectations can be a way to help them get a better feel for your course. Personalizing your content, that goes two ways. You personalizing your content for your students, and then you personalizing your communication with your students. So replacement strings are a good way to personalize content for your students, and I'm going to show you that. And then you personalizing your communication means you doing things like using students' first names, or using some affective communication strategies, like showing them like, hey, good to see you, hope you had a good weekend. Those kinds of things that help students feel like you're actually a person and you're actually building a relationship, and intelligent agents are gonna help you do that with replacement strings. Encouraging students, how do you help your students develop some grit and tenacity? Growth mindset is a big one. My children say, I don't want to develop a growth mindset, which I always say is a great start to developing one. And so I think sometimes in online, students, they hit this sort of barrier and they decide, I don't know, this might be too hard for me, I don't have enough time, I can't do it, and they drop. Or they drop out of your course and don't drop the course, and so later they're going to end up with an F. So what can you do to sort of recognize that a student potentially is struggling or maybe has some deficiencies and help them make up for some of those? An intelligent agent can help you do that as well. Showing concern for your students. So beyond a student who's just not performing up to standard, what about those students who just disappear? We all have those students who they haven't logged in, they haven't done their discussion, they haven't turned in their assignments. How do you show concern for those students? Because a lot of times reaching out to those students and trying to encourage them to come back, that might get them back. We all know there's some students that that's not going to work, but we can try, and an intelligent agent can do that for us as well. Giving feedback, we all know feedback is a very time-intensive process, and as I said, intelligent agents aren't going to actually save you a lot of time on actually grading or giving the feedback, but there's some ways that you can personalize feedback. You can use an intelligent agent or a replacement string to give global feedback. So if any of you use that global feedback box in your Dropbox assignments, for example, or a discussion, you could say to students, if you want to say, hey class, you all did a great job on this or whatever, you could actually personalize it to each individual student. So they feel like you gave them individual feedback, even though that feedback is going to the whole group. And then recognizing effort. How do you recognize, beyond just the grade that you're putting in the grade book, how do you recognize students' achievement or potentially improvement if it's a student who's actually started out low and has actually made progress throughout the course? An intelligent agent can do that. And the awards tool can also do that. And I'll show you a little bit about that at the end too. And an intelligent agent and awards can work together. Does anybody use awards in your course? A couple of you. Great. Okay. So an intelligent agent can help you do all of these things. And once you get them set up at the beginning of the course, it actually doesn't take a lot of time. Replacement strings are codes that D2L has created that you can put in your course, and it will replace that code with whatever you want it to say. So in this screenshot, and I apologize, it's a little bit small, but this is a screenshot of my homepage, and I'll show you this in a little bit. On the course homepage, on my announcement widget, it says here, hello Layne, which is my first name. So what I have done is use a replacement string. Our computer has decided to quit. That's probably not great. Sorry. So what I've done is I've used a replacement string called first name. And so instead, in my design, when I go in and edit this, it actually says hello, little squiggly bracket, first name, all squished together. And then, are you laughing at my squiggly bracket terminology?
What it's actually called.
And then the squiggly bracket, and then a closed squiggly bracket, which I'll show you. And so instead of just saying welcome, it says welcome to me personally. I will say, if you happen to teach multiple sections or prepare a course for other people to teach, you'll have to explain to them you do this, because I clone a lot of sections for people who teach a course I designed, and they all started taking it out because they said, oh no, it has your name in there, or it has my name in there, their own name. And I said, no, that's by design. I promised your students it will say their name. So it's a little bit confusing the first time you see it. But that is a sort of a warm and welcoming way to greet your students into your class. And there are a lot of opportunities to do that in D2L. The course homepage is one, D2L email is another one, class feedback, as I described before, if you want to use that global feedback, and intelligent agents are a prime opportunity to use a replacement string. And so we're going to look at lots of examples how to do that. Intelligent agents are a tool that D2L has created that act on your behalf, basically. So the main functions of an intelligent agent that I use in my course are monitoring my students' course access, monitoring their access of the content, their discussion participation, because discussions are a really big part of my course, checklist progress. If you use checklists in your course, that's a good way to determine if students are achieving or progressing as you expect them to. And assessment results, so quizzes, discussions, Dropbox assignments. And then the agent can also notify either the student or the instructor or both. And so we'll look at how that happens in D2L, and I'm going to show you several examples of how I use them. Before we actually get into my course, does anybody have any questions about just the basics about what's a replacement string, what's an agent? Yes?
Are you gonna share with us where we can find a list of various replacement strings?
Yes, so in your packets, if you picked up the packet, there is a two-sided document. One side says intelligent agent replacement strings, and the other side says replacement strings, maybe content replacement strings. And so these are provided by D2L. I have just reformatted them, but they come directly from D2L, and these are all of the options that you would probably want to use. The other longer document is actually 8 templates that D2L has created for types of intelligent agents. So you could actually follow their script, create those intelligent agents in your class, and you'd be good to go. I also, in this presentation, which I will email to Sheila after the workshop is over, there are several links on the back that you can actually go to. D2L has a 1-hour webinar about using intelligent agents. They also have a slide presentation of that webinar. They also have multiple tip sheets. So there's lots of linked resources in both the content of the presentation and the handouts. Any other questions before we start looking at a course? Okay. Okay, so the first place that I'm using a replacement string, as I mentioned, is here on my homepage. So this is a place where on the announcement in the course introduction, I'm replacing Layne with that first name replacement string. So that's a good place to do it on your course homepage. Other places where you can use replacement strings that are really helpful are emails. So I'll show you an example if you wanted to create an email. And by all means, if you have a laptop and want to actually work along with me, feel free to do that. I want to show you how you would do that. So it's very easy. You would just go to compose, your regular message, and you would choose whatever your user you want to send your email to. And instead of writing Dear Layne, I'm gonna do Dear First Name. And it's important that you do keep first name together. There's no space between the two, and the F and the N are capitalized. And so, Dear First Name, and then you would type the rest of your message, and then you would click Send. And so once that message comes to me, well, look, no external permission. So, instructional designers and Scott, can you explain why that happened?
It's because the D2L email is not attached to the MTSU email.
Oh, did I put in my MTSU email?
Yeah, for security
See.
purposes, so.
Don't talk and type at the same time.
They can't communicate, so we
Thank
don't
you.
break the
I just didn't
internet.
even pay attention to what I was typing, of course. Okay, let's try again.
Imagine if your D2L got the level of spam that your regular emails got.
Probably.
And it would be worse.
Okay, much better. Okay,
Yeah, there's no proof pointer.
and
It'd
now,
just be chaos.
when I click the message, if I'm the student, it has replaced first name with my name. So I use this feature weekly whenever I send my students an email saying I've posted the agenda for the week. I use the weekly agenda in the discussion feature. And so I'm able to send one email, but all my students feel like I've sent them a personal email. So that's one way in which to use a replacement string. Yes, Jordan.
So did you put all of their addresses in the
Actually,
class list?
fabulous question. What I typically do is I just go to the class list
Uh-huh.
and then I go to the student tab and I click all here, select all, and then click email. And then that populates all of their addresses for me, and then I'm able to type the message. Did you see how I did that? I'll do it again too, just in case. So go to your class list. I always go to the student tab in case I have another person in my course that's not a student and I don't want to give them a lot of messages. Click the select all rows button up here and then just click the email button. And so that will get you started on an email and then you can send that to all of your students. There's other replacement strings that are helpful to use if you want to personalize things and if you teach multiple sections or multiple courses. You can actually, I have multiple sections and it's helpful for me to see which section I'm in when I'm in the course. And so you can use a replacement string that will actually populate your course ID. So PRST 3995 DO1 versus DO4. So that's on your list of things and you'll see there's other places that you can do that as well. And I'll show you that just in case you think that that's helpful for you.
His organization name, is that your course number?
The org ID, so Scott, you can help me. So do you or Kim or Tara, because I don't have the list in front of me. There's org ID and in fact, let me show you another really helpful thing. If you go into, I'm gonna go into Intelligent Agents because there's a link there. So there's a lot of places when you can use a replacement string. In fact, I'll show you a different way. You can edit your home page to use a replacement string as well. Any of you edit your home pages? Here, there are links in several places in D2L that say what replacement strings can I use in a title. So that's a very helpful link to click because then it's going to tell you, you can put first name in here all you want, but that's not a replacement string that matches this section of D2L. So here's the one, org unit ID identifies the org unit name, name, code. And so we can do some of those and test them. And I'll show you what they look like. You can see on my home page at the top, do you see where it's 3995 DO4? So that's a way that you can do that. And then in every course, it will have the ID for that course, which all your students see that as well, obviously, so it helps your students. let's do.
Layne, I'm so sorry to do
Yes.
this.
No,
Yeah.
please.
But I'm trying to do this.
Yes.
Add the first name
Mhm.
on my homepage. I can just put the squiggly bracket, first name, squiggly bracket. I don't have to tell it to be a widget. The squiggly brackets say this is a widget.
It should do it. So click it and see.
Oh, good idea.
It'll change.
I always say it's hard to break a lot of things.
It worked.
It works, see?
But you say click it what?
So, I'm sorry. Click. Click publish. Like if she's on the
like
news
say
page.
publish,
Oh,
okay,
it's
gotcha.
at the bottom. I'm sorry.
Like stuff on the screen.
It should not use shortcuts. Okay, so let's do a test replacement string, and let's use these replacement strings that they have provided for us. And this is a great way to test out when you're doing this on your own computer and you're thinking, what on earth do these mean? You can just create a test. So I happen to be in my course, so my students will see this right now, which they'll wonder what I'm doing. So let's go back to the home page and we can see, and I didn't do any formatting, so, okay. So the identifier of our unit is a number. So that's not gonna be something that I'm probably gonna use. It won't be very useful.
It is the examining number.
Okay, the examining number. So for those of you who might be using Examity, I'm not, so I couldn't answer those questions, but Kim and Tara might could.
It's the other way you can get to it, or you can just look up at your nav bar when you're in a class.
Oh, okay. This is the course title and rubric, so that's the org unit. So the org unit ID one, that's probably the one you'd find most useful in your class. That's gonna be the most meaningful to your students. This is your CRN and your semester 2020 spring. The organization name is the university name. So a couple of those would be helpful to you, a couple of them wouldn't. But that's always, to me, the easiest way to test out what these things will be like. I'll just create a sample news announcement on my homepage, put those in, and then I can see what kind of thing is this gonna return for me. I don't use those nearly as often as I use first name. First name to me is the most useful replacement string because I can use it on the homepage, I can use it in email, I can use it in discussion, I use it in agents. It's really, really helpful. Other questions about replacement strings? We're gonna keep talking about them, but I'm gonna show you more of how they're used in agents. Anyone have any questions? Okay. I'll delete this one so my students don't send me an email and say, is this our new assignment? Wouldn't it be fun to say yes? Figure it out.
It's your job.
Really freak them out. Okay, so intelligent agents. So the way that you will find intelligent agents in your course is to go to the Edit Course button in your menu bar. And then when you scroll down almost to the bottom, in the communication section, there is one called Intelligent Agents. And when you click that, unless you're teaching a course where someone might have happened to clone Intelligent Agents for you, it should probably be empty. And so you can create them, and I'm gonna show you some examples of them. And as I mentioned, if anyone's interested in these, I am happy to ask Jimmy to add you as a user in my course and we can copy them out for your course. Or I can export them as a zip file and I can send that to you. Or you can use the scripts that are in the handouts. So the first example that I want to show you is the welcome to class email. So instead of just sending all my students an email before the class begins so that it's there waiting for them, I actually asked D2L to notify or to identify when the student actually accesses my own section. So you know when you look at your students' progress, you can see they've logged into D2L and you can see they've logged into your course. What I want D2L to notice is when did they log into my course, and then I want to send them an email that says, I'm so glad you found us. Are you ready to get started? And that's when I do some of my sort of setting expectations in that email. And so you can see when I go to edit, there's a lot of features, and then I'm going to actually show you this one has run so we can look at it. So there's a description, which is very handy whenever you have a lot of agents, to give yourself a description that makes sense to you. The agent is enabled, has to be checked if you want it to actually run. So you can leave that box unchecked and create agents to your heart's delight, and they will never do anything to mess with your students. It's a real good way to just create them and test them. And D2L has an incredibly helpful feature that I'm gonna show you called Test Run. So you can actually run your agent and see how it will work without worrying about it sending to the students and it actually not being what you expected it to be. The first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna select the user's role, who you want to receive this. Almost all the time, I only choose student banner because I don't want it to be monitoring my login activity or my discussion activity. I'd be getting an agent all the time because I'm not necessarily gonna participate at the same rate that I want my students to. So if I were going to create a new one, I would uncheck this. The reason that I have this checked now is because I ran a test and I wanted to show this to you. So then you can choose several different things in an intelligent agent. One is login activity, and that would be D2L global. So if a student just goes to eLearn and logs in, that is login activity. Course activity means, did they actually enter my own course? And so for this particular agent, what I've done is I've enabled the agent by clicking the box, and then I've said, please search for users who have accessed this course in the past day. And for the first week of class, I run this agent every day, and we'll look at that. And then I'll show you some other agents to where you might use some release conditions. Oh, that's not the right one, okay.
We all know he is on.
And so then we'll move down, once you've determined if you want it to be login or course, and I want to make clear you don't have to choose either of these. You could choose this and neither of those be selected. So for this particular welcome, we're doing course activity. And so under the actions, this is when you choose how often do you want this to happen. So for the most part, on all of my agents, I select the top choice, which is just do this the first time D2L notices a student doing this, because I don't want to overwhelm them with emails. And so in some instances, for example, not participating in discussion. If you have the agent checking on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I don't necessarily want D2L to send them an email every single day. I just want them to notify the first time that the student has missed the deadline, and then only one time. And so then I'm checking the box that says send an email. And so I'm gonna show you where you can personalize this section, so you can make it look like it's coming from you and not D2L. And you can change the reply email address, so that if a student happens to reply to the email the agent sent them, it's gonna come to you and not to D2L's email address. And now is when we're gonna get into our second set of replacement strings. So on the reverse side of that page that I gave you, there's a specific set of replacement strings for intelligent agents. And you'll notice that this one is a little bit different. So instead of using first name, we're using something called initiating user. And so that is the student. And so that's the email of the student that caused the agent to identify them. And then in the subject, I'm just titling mine welcome to the, using the course number. And then in the email, you can see we've got now a third replacement string to see. It's squiggly brackets, initiating user, so the same thing from the top, and then first name. So if you just use first name in this section, it won't work correctly. So you need to use the replacement string specific language for the intelligent agents. And then there's the email, and I'm quick linking them to some things. And then at the bottom, I could actually attach a file. So one really fabulous thing I know someone does that I would love to do if I really had more time, they actually do a video. And so they send their students a welcome video that way, and they upload the video file. So there's lots of ways that you can make that even more personal if you have the time. And then you can decide if you want plain text or HTML. And then you can decide your schedule. So on the schedule, you can click up at the top, we've selected every one day. And at the bottom, this is when I decide what time frame do I want it to send it. So this is just the welcome email for the beginning of the semester. So I ask it to start searching for students. I let them in 5 days before. So I say, start looking for my students that day and stop looking for my students later. And so you can see that this one has gotten undone. So I want to stop it on the 26th. That's the last day that I want it to look. Because if a student hasn't come in by the first week, I'm probably gonna be looking for them in another way, which is a different intelligent agent. And so what D2L is gonna do is every day, and we could probably ask Scott this because I've noticed it doesn't always run at the same time. So this is not something you can control. D2L is gonna send all of these agents out at the same time. This semester, I'm noticing it's at about 7 p.m. And that's gonna be really important. This actually got me in trouble one semester because I said, please identify students who haven't posted on the discussion. And I asked it to run on Wednesday because I thought it was gonna run at midnight, but it ran at 7. And I had a student who said, but I posted on the discussion because they posted at like 11 p.m. And so you'll probably want to not use an agent like that until you see when the agent's gonna run. And now I change it to Thursday, so I can be sure. And so the student might not get the email till Friday, but that's okay. They still missed the early deadline, and in my course to earn the most points, they still needed to post by Wednesday. So there's still a substantive reason for me to let them know they missed the deadline. But that's something you'll want to pay attention to, because the student was not pleased that I had identified them as a non-participant when they had. So the agent is helpful, sometimes not so helpful. And then you would just click Save and Close. And then you want to save the agent. And what it's saying is it will not retroactively do anything to your students. So it's fine to make changes and it won't affect your students who may have already received this agent in the past. And then you just click OK. And on your main intelligent agent screen at the bottom, you'll see, here's how you're gonna know what time the agent ran. So yesterday it ran at 7:02 p.m. and it identified 4 of my students who accessed the course for the first time yesterday. And so you can click that link that's 4 users identified. And you can see, these are the 4 of my students who accessed it yesterday, and it notifies you that it did send them the email that I asked it to send. You can do another thing if you are the kind of person who doesn't want to go back in and check the agent. You can actually include yourself on that agent email. So when you're going into the settings in the email section, you could carbon copy your D2L email address. So some people, depending on the kind of agent, like if you're looking for an agent to run to tell you, these are the students who haven't logged in a week, I might want D2L to actually send me an email about that too, because that's gonna rise to a level that I'm probably gonna wanna look for the student outside of D2L. So that can be very helpful to carbon copy yourself depending on what kind of agent you're using. I don't carbon copy myself on this kind because I can see it sent it to them. I can also see in the class list those students are here. I'm not all that concerned, and I just am trying to limit the number of emails that come in my email inbox. But your mileage may vary on that. So that's one way to do that. So that is the welcome to class email.
If you wanted to CC yourself, what do you type in that line? My name?
No, well, I always type in my lbryant@elearn.mtsu.edu email address. I do the whole thing. There might be a replacement string for that, but I've never used it.
So if you're using these, and you said you could cut and paste them from semester to semester, but it seems like you'd have to update them every semester, right? Because the dates.
That's right, you do every semester have to go update that schedule. So you don't have to do the work of and I'll show you in some of the other ones, there's a lot of linkages that you're making about the criteria. You wouldn't have to reinvent any of that, but you would change the schedule. That's the only thing you would have to change, unless you wanted to update the text of the email or something like that.
If you start a semester and you've changed them, I'm just thinking in terms of
Sure.
like sharing a shell with like adjuncts.
Yes.
And I'm like, right, I've decided this makes sense to me, but they're just not gonna be aware of it. is it automatically unenabled at the start of the semester?
Yes,
Yes.
So if they don't know, it just won't get used.
that's right. It's really nice. The default is not to enable it, so
So
someone
that
has
would
to
be something
first.
you also have to do every semester, is like go
That's
enable everything and put the dates in.
Right,
I
and we
just
don't.
realized that.
We
That
don't
makes
do
it
that for our sections, like we have a training, and in fact, in February, we're gonna do the same training for all of our adjuncts. And so we'll teach them how to do it and then leave that up to them, so they won't have to do it. Any questions about the welcome one specifically, or are you ready to see some other ideas about other things? Okay, so the welcome's the one that I start with. In my class, discussion is a very big part of the curriculum, and so there's a couple of things that I do related to discussion. One is that the student has not participated in the first 3 days. So that's the example that I was giving you whenever I got burned, when the agent ran a little earlier than I expected. So this is a discussion related to agent, and so what I do is do the exact same thing that we did in the beginning. I've selected to only look for students. And then you'll see here, I didn't select anything about login activity. I didn't select anything about course activity, but I did create a release condition. And does anybody use release conditions in their content? Okay, instructional designers, we know you do all of these things. So release conditions they're something that you could do to where if you wanted students to not be able to see your content until they read your syllabus, you could set your course up that way. Well, the agents are using release conditions in a similar way. So in order to create a release conditions, you would just do create and attach. And you're gonna select the condition type. And now is where you're gonna see just how many things you could use an agent for. So the agent can be connected to Dropbox activities, not limited to, if a student submits something to your Dropbox. If you want to notify a student that you have posted feedback to your Dropbox, the agent can send them a notification. You can run an agent if a student meets a certain score on a rubric, that might be high, low, whatever you determine, or a student who does not submit to a Dropbox. You can run an agent connected to awards, I'll show you those. You can run agents connected to checklists. Does anyone use checklists? Okay, several of you do, okay. You can run agents related to your class list, to competencies, if you happen to use competencies, to content, so you can have the agent look for students who have visited content topics, who have not visited content topics, who have not completed a content topic. So I never actually understand how D2L measures the time students spend on those content topics. So I guess for a person who wanted a student to spend an hour on a content topic, it would let them know if they hadn't done that and completed it. The discussion ones, so you can have it run if posts authored, and that's the one that this one is, and I'm gonna show you. So the way that I do that is post authored in a topic, and then it's gonna open another set of criteria related to that. So I'm gonna select the actual discussion that I want it to check. And then in my class, students must do an original post and 2 responses. So that's 3 total, so I'm gonna enter 3. And then under type, I'm gonna say threads and replies. So D2L is basically searching every day in my discussion to see, are there any students on Thursday who didn't post Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday? And if those students did not post Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, Thursday at 7 p.m., the agent will run. It will send those students an email, and we'll see the text of the email, letting them know they have missed that deadline. So the student can still participate in the discussion, but in order to earn the highest points, they should have posted early in the week. So this is just to let them know, hey, that you haven't done this. And in a new course, first time that they've had me, other courses may not have run that way, so this is just a helpful way to prompt them that they've missed something about this course. And then you would click create. And then scrolling down on actions, again, I'm saying take action just the first time. I don't want it to send the student an email Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I think one time is probably sufficient. And again, I'm copying myself on this one for the first time. And then I'm using that replacement string, initiating user first name. And I'm saying some things like, I noticed, so the student thinks that I'm monitoring and I'm looking at that. And I might notice if I don't have a lot of students in my class, but if you're teaching a class of 35, it's hard to notice 1 or 2 students who aren't posting by Wednesday. And so I'll say, I just want to remind you of a few tips that will help you succeed in this class. And then I can move forward and give them the tips and say, they're assigned to help you succeed on the assignments. They're scaffolded, et cetera, et cetera. And then I'm running the schedule. So for this, I'm having this particular agent only run for the very first discussion in the course, because this is the first discussion that they've encountered. This is the first time they understand that these are the parameters for discussion. And so it's going to start on Thursday and it'll stop on Sunday. And so that will enable me to identify all students the very first week who aren't meeting the standard out of the gate. And then the student gets that email, and then I know, and what I do then when I give feedback to the whole class is I congratulate those who met that standard. And so I only do this the very first discussion period of the semester. I don't want to inundate them with these every single week. I feel like if I let you know this in the first discussion, you should know now. And so I'm not going to clog up your email inbox for the rest of the semester about this. I also should mention I teach accelerated courses, and so if you've done poorly the first week, the next 6-7 weeks are maybe going to be potentially painful. And so I'm probably trying to identify some behaviors that we want to correct early on because they seem to be magnified in the accelerated term. And then I would just click save and close, and then that agent would run. And because today is Thursday at 3:45, it's not going to have run yet, but tonight at 7, it will run, and I'll get to see which students this week, first week, aren't meeting that standard. So I find that to be very useful, and of course, that does rely a lot on discussion. If you don't use a lot of discussion, that might not be helpful. And then another discussion one that I use is the Exemplary Discussion Award. So I've created some awards in my courses that I'm trying to use to incentivize and encourage that behavior that I want them to demonstrate throughout the semester. And so I've created an intelligent agent that will look through when I have posted feedback for discussions. I have created a release condition that is actually under discussions, and it's score on associated rubric. So if you don't use rubrics, this option might not work for you, but I do use a rubric. And so I can choose that option, and then I can say, let's do it for Module 1 discussion. And I want it to be an accelerated discussion rubric. And I want the overall rubric score, and I want it to be exemplary. And so I'm able to set all of those criteria, and then this agent is going to look through when I've posted discussion feedback. It's going to identify all students who scored exemplary on the rubric, and it's going to send them an email. And they're also going to earn a badge for the award. And so what this one is actually doing, because I give an award, I have actually created a release condition that's tied to the award. But if you're not using awards, you would do exactly what I did. And so again, here's another example where I'm using a replacement string that's not a name. So that's when I'm using the org unit name. So I don't even have to say, if I'm teaching different classes, I can still copy these agents into both of my classes and it will work for both. Because I haven't said PRST 3995, I've just said replace that with my course name. And then I say, congratulations, you've earned this award, and wonderful, 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 keep up the good work. And then I ask that to run every day of the term. And the reason why I do that is I'm only going to give that award one time, but some students might not earn it in the first discussion. And it might take them until the 3rd or 4th discussion to earn the exemplary award, but I still want to congratulate that achievement by the time they actually get there. So I'm having it run, but at the top, I selected that option that says take action only the first time. So even my students who are going to be exemplary every week, they're not going to get this email every time, but it helps me make sure a student who didn't get it the first time is going to get it later. And then I would click save and close, and they would get that email, and then they're also going to get this award that I created that says exemplary discussion. And so this little discussion bubble award, it will pop up in their award section. So it also has release conditions, so you would set that up. And then you can see if if a student logged in, they would see it under my awards. And since I haven't earned any awards for myself, you can't see them, but they're there. So that's another way to sort of demonstrate presence by saying, I'm not just trying to, sometimes it's easy for me, and maybe I'm alone in this. I recognize a lot of the things the students aren't doing well, and I don't really always recognize the things that they are doing successfully. And so this is a way to help me recognize those good efforts without me having to do any work. Once I set this up at the beginning, D2L does all of this for me, which is really, really helpful. And I should say too, I'm gonna show you one other kind of agent and then we'll have some questions. But I will say the one about, that I'm getting ready to show you, I do all of these also for each module. There's an award that I've created. So once they complete all of those activities for a module, they'll also get an award and the agent will run and send them the award. So those are all the same as the exemplary discussion one. But the last one that I want to show you is the encouragement after a low quiz grade. So I teach introduction to interdisciplinary research and problem solving. And it's new content for most students. It's a lot of vocabulary that they're not used to. And sometimes they don't do well. And the quizzes are low stakes, they're open book. But the vocabulary is really important for them to be able to do the later assignments. And so a lot of times they take them, they don't do very well the first time. And I'm trying to look for students who might get really demotivated by a low quiz grade really quickly, and they may not try or they may disappear. So what I created was an agent to look for the student's quiz grade. This again is going to be an agent that I'm only going to run once. I only wanted to notify the student one time, but I basically created a quiz, an agent for each of the quizzes. And I said, let me know if a student makes a 69 or below on the quiz. So I'm looking for students who aren't scoring average or higher. And then I ask it to take action just the first time. And then what I do is I say tips for improving quiz scores. And I'll say, I noticed that your score on the quiz was lower than average. I want to share a couple of tips. And so this is an example of an agent that I have actually, when I use this, students, because they can reply back to you, have replied and said, oh, thank you so much. I was really disappointed. And so it's able to open up a conversation between you and the student to where the student feels like you're invested in me. You've noticed that I didn't probably do as well as you had hoped as the instructor or I hoped as a student. And the student says, oh, you really do want me to do better. And just having that interaction with the instructor at the very beginning, if this happens to be the first quiz, it opens them up to usually maybe asking you more questions or asking you for help if you need help. And so I have found this one to be really valuable. Students really do respond to it. And she has said, I really appreciate that. This is my first online class. I'm back to school after, however many years, she said. So there's a lot of our students who, they're not comfortable online, they're not comfortable in class, it might have been a while, and so sometimes that kind of encouragement, I think, goes a long way to help those kinds of students who might be a little bit trepidatious and insecure. So that's that one. And then you can see, here's one, completed all Module 1 activities. I have this one go ahead and start checking on the first day of class. It would be difficult for a student to actually do that on the first day, but I have it do it, and so you can see this is a really good example of an agent that's running actively right now this week. Let me get back out, sorry. It's running this week, but it's not identifying anybody. So it says 0 users identified. And so that lets me know it's running, but there's just nobody that's finished it yet. And these are really more, those module completion awards, those are really just for the students' benefit. Those aren't really alerting me of a whole lot, other than maybe if no one's earning them, then I'm probably concerned. But other than that, that's really just for their benefit. The ones like the student hasn't logged in, the student's not succeeding well in my assignments, you can have some other ones. These are just the ones that I chose to show you today, but I have some other ones. Didn't turn in a Dropbox assignment. Again, in an accelerated course where all assignments scaffold. If you miss the first one, it's gonna be trouble. So it helps me identify you're missing and I can reach back out to you. Those are the ones that I think are really valuable, that help me sort of intervene when necessary. But I think the other ones, because they're personalized, those are the ones that help students feel like you're there with them. I think whenever I used to teach and I would return feedback, and I think I give a lot of feedback, and I think that you can kind of understand me in there, but a lot of times if the feedback was critical, the student has a fairly negative maybe impression of me. And so these kinds of things enable me to interact with the student and show them a different side of me than they might see. And a side that I really do want to show them. I mean, I really do want to encourage students, but it would take a lot of time to go through your class list and reward all of these students one by one. So D2L agents, replacement strings and awards, they enable you, it does all the work for you, but it makes your students feel like you're really present and invested, and that can be pretty difficult to do online, so. But that's what I have for you. That's a lot, I know, a solid hour. Questions about that? Is that totally not what you expected to hear today? Yes.
Going back to the beginning, you said you make the alarm between Thursday and Sunday,
Yes.
but if they are supposed to turn in by Thursday, then why do you go Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
They're supposed to turn in by Wednesday, but when the agent runs at 7 o'clock, I said one time a student got the email and they said, but I did post on Wednesday, but they had posted at 11 p.m. and the agent ran at 7. And so now I've set it to Thursday. And so even if they don't get the email until Friday, a lot of times a student who didn't post on Wednesday might not post on Thursday either. So it still catches them, and they'll still, get the benefit of being prompted. Even if they did it on Thursday, they were still late. So it lets them know, not only did you not participate, but you've lost some points now because you didn't participate early.
But why do you have to go through Sunday, I guess is what I'm asking.
But my discussion's in on Sunday. So there might be some students who didn't post Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And so it will get them no matter when. So if you're late, you're late, and the tips still apply whether you were 1 day late or 4 days late. Other questions? I know that's a lot.
So
Yes,
you could do something based on a rubric criteria, did I hear that right?
yes, rubric criteria,
So
yes. Mhm.
So I could like have a rubric criteria of grammar.
Sure.
And then if they score low, I could say, hey, look
Yes,
at
here's
your,
resources.
look at my comments and please go to the writing
Yes.
center.
Mhm.
Very nice.
Exactly. And on mine, when I do module completion activities, it's not just completion to get the award. So you actually have to pass an assignment. So I think it's one thing to say, well, you actually breathe through all the activities. It's another thing to say, you seem to have learned what I wanted you to learn in the activities. And so you can set those criteria like that. So you just don't get an award because you clicked all the boxes. You got the award because I think that you learned something and you seem to be achieving. So those you can set, it's very granular. You can do it by rubric criteria. Yes?
Would you show me how you got to the agent list?
Sure. You go to edit course, and then it's very close to the bottom. Under the communication category, it says intelligent agents. And so I was saying that your course won't have any in there unless someone has given them to you, but I'm happy if anybody wants any of these, I can add you to my course or export them for you. I'm happy to do that. Yes,
How
yes.
long has D2L offered those intelligent agents?
That's a good question. I don't know. Scott, do you know how long agents have been a part of D2L?
This iteration right before daylight.
Okay. So a while, right, a while. Other questions? And I put on the presentation, with Sheila, they can email you, I put my contact information. And so if you actually have questions or anything, please call me. I'm happy to talk to you. I also, in the presentation, these are those linked things from D2L. So this is a 1-hour webinar that walks you through how to set them up. This is the slideshow version of that webinar. This is a link that tells you what all the replacement strings are. Here's another thing that talks about agents. And I want to show you one more thing because that's included in this, and then the basics about replacement strings. One thing, when you go into the agent criteria, I want to show you how to set it up so that it looks like it's coming from you. So if you go to the intelligent agent section again and click the settings link, in the settings link, you are gonna see what is defaulted by D2L is use the system defaults. So a student is gonna be pretty obvious that it's not really you sending it because it says D2L help, so that's gonna give away the secret. And so you can change it to where you say, no, actually make it personalized. It comes from like my name and then my D2L email address. And so once you click save that one time, it's gonna do that for all your agents. So you want to make sure to do that because I do think it's not quite as effective if it looks like D2L sent it to you.
That defeats the purpose.
That's right. I mean, it's still very helpful and it has saved you time, but the student may not feel like it's you as much. It really does pull back the curtain and you see the wizard. That's right, you see the sausage being made back there. Other questions? I appreciate your coming. Yes?
You say you have badge, but we can't see them.
Oh, yes, the badges. And I'm happy to share these awards to you too, but awards are so specific to a course, they may not be as helpful. These are the awards. So I created these awards for myself. So these aren't D2L, so like D2L has a set that you can use. So I created all these little icons myself. So they aren't a part of D2L, but I created all of those and then my students can see them once they earn them in my class, but they can't see them before then. You can make it so that students can see them all the time. So that's different. But you can, let me show you just really quickly, you can do add award to course and you can click create and you'll see that there's tons of different options in D2L.
So when I look across the top, I don't have anything that says awards.
Sorry, I customized my nav bar. So your award, Scott, would be where?
Assessments, she just told me. Thank you.
Sorry. I changed my nav bar. So if you went to awards, you can say, make this award available to all my courses. It never expires, et cetera, and you can choose an icon from the library. And you'll see D2L has a big section of award badges that you can use. And you can click show more multiple times. So you can assign an award that you want if you don't want to create your own. So let's say we want to do this handout badge. Click select, and then save and close. And then depending on when you want to give it out, you would be able to assign it because now it's in your course. And those also copy between courses. So if you create them in one section, you can copy them to your other sections, they'll be available. I like awards, I think they're kind of handy. I like at the end of a course, I'll show you my fall course. So it's interesting at the end of your course, sometimes it's kind of sad, because you can see all the ones that students earned. So for example, go to awards. Okay, so in my fall course, it does them from descending order. So you can see, we get down to some students, well, not Carla, who's my colleague, who's the teacher who is in the course. I haven't earned any awards, but we have a few students who aren't earning some of those module awards. And so those agents that are looking for those students' login behavior, so I mean, some of the students that have not a lot of module icons, I already know that that student's not earning all those because I've gotten some of those alerts, I've seen their grades. So it's interesting at the end of the semester to see, and I think kind of interesting, I should reveal I'm also the assessment coordinator for University College, and so I do a lot of things thinking about assessment. And so I look in there and I think, is there one module that seems to always not be earned? Maybe I need to have some work to do in that module. I might need to rework some things. So it's kind of interesting at the end to see. So I kind of like awards because it's motivating for students, I think, but also it's helpful information for me too.
Could a condition for an award be that you've already earned a different award?
Good question. I don't know. I don't know that it is, but
I'm just thinking of
trying to stump the chump, aren't you,
the
Michael?
belt system. That
Right, yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I don't know. Scott, do you know that?
I like to think there is.
You could always try it and see.
Yeah.
And if it is, let us know. Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you guys for coming.
Great.